In 1867, a night watchman in Baltimore heard scratching from inside a freshly covered grave. By the time they dug her up, her fingernails were gone. There's a reason graveyards close at sunset. Not because of superstition, not because of ghosts, but because of what humanity discovered the hard way, that the most horrifying things don't happen to the dead. They happen around them. For thousands of years, someone had to watch the graves at night. Someone had to stand guard in the darkness, listening, waiting, because in the silence between dusk and dawn, the ground itself became a battleground. Body snatchers, grave robbers, the prematurely buried clawing their way up through 6 feet of earth. And the watchers, those forgotten souls who chose to spend their nights among the dead, they heard things that medicine couldn't explain, things that history tried to bury. Tonight, we descend into the hidden world of the graveyard shift, the real one, where Victorian horror met medieval tradition, and where the question wasn't whether you'd hear something in the darkness, but whether you'd have the courage to investigate. Welcome to the hour when the silence beneath the earth began to speak. This is Vespertine Era. Picture this: London, 1820s, midnight. A man named Thomas sits on a wooden chair between 2 fresh graves, a loaded pistol across his lap. The cemetery stretches out before him like a sea of stone. His breath fogs in the October cold. Thomas isn't a gravedigger. He isn't clergy. He's a graveyard watcher. And he's being paid 6 shillings a night to make sure these bodies stay in the ground. Because in the 19th century, medical schools were desperate. Surgeons needed corpses to study anatomy, but the law only allowed them to dissect the bodies of executed criminals. There weren't nearly enough, so a black market emerged. They called them resurrection men, professional grave robbers who worked exclusively at night, equipped with wooden spades that made no metallic sound, canvas sacks, and an unnerving knowledge of how quickly they could exhume a body. The record: 12 minutes from first shovel to extracted corpse. Families who could afford it hired men like Thomas. Sometimes entire communities would form watching societies, neighbors taking turns through the night, armed and alert. But here's what the history books don't tell you: the watchers didn't just fear the resurrection men. They feared what they heard coming from inside the graves. In 1896, a British doctor named J.C. Owsley compiled reports from graveyard watchmen across Europe. What he found became one of the most disturbing medical documents of the Victorian era. Over 200 testimonies, all describing the same phenomenon. Sounds, not footsteps, not animals, but scratching, scraping, muffled screaming that seemed to emanate from beneath the earth itself. And when they dug, they found fingernails embedded in coffin lids, splinters of wood under dead fingernails, bodies twisted in positions of pure terror. This wasn't superstition. This was Taphephobia's dark reality, the fear of being buried alive. In the 18th and 19th centuries, medical science was primitive. Catalepsy, comas, deep fainting spells, all could be mistaken for death. Cholera epidemics moved so fast that bodies were buried within hours, sometimes with the faintest pulse still fluttering. A German researcher named Franz Hartmann studied over 700 cases of premature burial. He found that approximately 2 to 3% of deceased individuals in the 1800s may have been buried while still alive. Do the math. In London alone, during the Victorian era, that's potentially thousands of people. And the night watchers, they heard them. One account from 1884 describes a watchman named William Tebb patrolling a cemetery in Glasgow. He wrote, "At 2:30 in the morning, I heard a sound like cloth tearing, then weeping, soft, childlike weeping coming from the Ashford family plot. I approached with my lantern held high, and I swear upon my life, the sound moved. It followed my footsteps beneath the ground, as though whoever lay below could sense my presence above. He dug emergency exhumation. The girl had been dead 3 days. Cholera, they said, but her hands were bloody. The coffin lid was scratched from the inside, and she'd died truly died only hours before he found her. The Victorian era became obsessed, paranoid inventors across Europe raced to create safety coffins, elaborate mechanisms that would allow the buried to signal for help. The most famous was the Betson's belfry, a bell mounted above ground, connected by a cord to the corpse's hand inside the coffin. If you woke up 6 feet under, you rang the bell. This is where the phrase "saved by the bell" actually comes from, not boxing. Burial. Other designs included breathing tubes that extended above ground, glass windows installed in coffin lids so passers-by could check for movement, and spring-loaded coffin lids that would burst open if pushed from inside. The Duke Ferdinand of Brunswick was so terrified of premature burial that he demanded a window be installed in his tomb, with a hammer placed in his hand. Instructions: if he woke, break the glass. They found him decades later. The glass was intact, but the hammer had moved 3 inches from its original position. In Paris, they established a waiting mortuary called the morgue, where bodies were displayed on slanted marble slabs for days. Bells tied to their fingers, attendants watching for any sign of movement. Thousands visited it. It became a tourist attraction, the macabre possibility that at any moment one of the corpses might sit up, gasping, and sometimes ... they did. But here's the twist that history forgot. All these inventions, all these precautions, they required one critical element. Someone had to be there at night to hear the bell ring. Someone had to patrol with a lantern, checking the breathing tubes, monitoring the graves. The graveyard watchers weren't just protecting the dead from thieves. They were protecting the living from being forgotten beneath the earth. Let me take you inside a single night, real account. Compiled from the diary of Robert Ainsworth, cemetery watchman, London, 1842, 10 p.m. Ainsworth begins his rounds. The cemetery is fresh, with 3 new burials. Standard patrol. Check the gates. Ensure no tools have been left out that could aid resurrection men. Light the perimeter lanterns. 11:30 p.m. First sound. Rustling near the eastern wall, he approaches with his pistol drawn. It's a fox scavenging. He notes this in his log. Details matter when you're distinguishing between the living and the dead. 1:15 a.m. The temperature drops. This is when it happens, he writes. The coldest hour, when breath becomes visible and every sound carries twice its distance. 2 a.m. He hears it. A bell. Faint but unmistakable. Ainsworth runs. The sound is coming from the Collins plot. Fresh burial. 2 days prior. Young woman, fever. He reaches the grave. The bell is ringing from below ground, connected to her coffin through a tube system. Protocol: alert the sexton. Begin emergency exhumation. Every second matters. 2:47 a.m. They break through. Open the coffin. She's dead. Has been 4 days. But the bell mechanism had corroded, and rats in the cemetery had triggered it while burrowing near the tube. False alarm. But Ainsworth writes something chilling in his diary that night. I wonder how many times the bell rang before we installed it. How many nights did she call out to silence with no one there to hear her? This was the psychological torture of the graveyard watch, not knowing if the silence was mercy or failure. Modern forensic science has examined exhumed coffins from the Victorian era. What they found is both rational and horrifying. Yes, some bodies showed signs of premature burial, genuine cases of people waking in their coffins. But many others showed movement after death. Decomposition creates gases. These gases cause bodies to shift, to move, to create sounds. Limbs can flex due to muscle contractions hours after death. In rare cases, vocal cords can vibrate as gases escape, creating sounds eerily similar to moaning. So when the graveyard watchers heard sound scratching, movement breathing, they were hearing something real. But whether it was the living or the dead, even science couldn't always answer. And there's one more thing, something that still happens today. Modern cemeteries occasionally report motion sensors being triggered at night in sections with no visitors. Security footage shows nothing, no animals, no intruders, just graves. And the faint, unexplained sound of scratching on the audio feed. In 2019, a cemetery in New Orleans had to disable their underground motion sensors because they were triggering every night between 2 and 3 a.m. The source was never identified. The equipment was functioning perfectly. So here's what we're left with. For centuries, someone had to stand guard at night in the place we fear most. They listened to the earth breathe, shift, and speak. They couldn't unhear what they heard, couldn't unsee what they found when they dug. The graveyard watchers are gone now. Modern embalming made premature burial nearly impossible. Security cameras replaced human vigilance. Medical science can detect death with certainty. But here's the question that keeps me awake. If we placed a microphone 6 feet below ground in an old cemetery somewhere, the graves date back to the 1800s, before modern burial practices, what would we hear? Would it be the geological sounds of earth settling, roots growing through wooden coffins long since rotted, or would it be something else? The Victorian era ended, but thousands of their graves remain, and on certain nights, in certain cemeteries, groundskeepers still report the same thing the old watchers did. The sense that something beneath the silence is waiting to be heard. That's the world after dark. That's the legacy of the Vespertine hours. The graveyard doesn't close at sunset to keep you out. It closes to keep something in. If this story crawled under your skin the way it did mine, hit subscribe. Vespertine Era brings you these hidden night stories every week, the history, mystery, and horror that only emerge when the sun goes down. Drop a comment. Would you spend a night as a graveyard watcher? And what would you do if you heard the bell ring? Until next time, remember the night is not empty. It's just waiting for someone to listen.